But these are the laws. They're laws that are used to build the airplane, to understand how all of this works, and the plane is designed to fly. So are you. I believe I can fly. Oh, man. You know, we say these words, I believe I can do it, I can believe I can fly, and as Grant and Myrna said, you know, when sometimes we say we're going to do it when we get around to it. Other times we say, oh, it's scary. It's scary to fly, it's scary to soar, it's scary to play big in our lives. So today we're going to talk about overcoming our fear of flying. Overcoming our fear of flying. You know, I grew up flying. My parents are German, and so they immigrated to the United States. So we went back every 3 years to visit our relatives, because it's the only relatives we had. All were in Europe, in Germany, and then, of course, once we were in Germany, we went on vacation with them. So we would fly around Europe, and I grew up with that, and I loved that, and I thought that was really cool. And so I had thought maybe someday I'll learn how to fly, and I really enjoyed it. And then, I don't know, and then, I had my little bout of drugs and alcohol, well, not so little maybe, and so got out on the other side of that, and I was in the ministry, and I was flying from Seattle to Los Angeles 2 or 3 times a month, working with our international organization. I was very involved, have been for years, and so I was flying 2-3 times a month, going down there, and slowly but surely, over the course of a few years, that got more and more and more painful, actually to the point where I would be flying and I would have to then fly other places. So I was easily flying 10 times a month, and I was crying on every takeoff and landing. Every one of them. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And so I did my affirmations, and I really tried to work with it, and it just really got worse and worse and worse. But I was bound and determined not to allow my fear of flying to keep me from doing what I wanted to do. So people who would travel with me began to talk about how unpleasant it was to fly with me. And I thought, okay, really, we have to do something about this. This is serious. So I decided to take flying lessons. So I had a dear friend at the time up in Washington State, and he had a little tail dragger plane, which is a plane that has the little wheel on the back. It's not like a Cessna, but it's got the little wheel in the back, and I can't remember the type of plane now. And he had it on a grass landing strip by his house, and I said, I'd like for you to teach me how to fly. And he knew my story, and he was like, okay. So the first time we went up in that plane, and it was after Mount St. Helens had blown, and so we took the little plane and we banked around Mount St. Helens, and we could look right down into the crater, and that was spooky. For many reasons, including the banking. And the little plane over the great big volcano. And then, we'd flown around for a while, and he was telling me about the rudder and the stick and all the different things. And he said, okay, now it's your turn. Ah! And I discovered that it wasn't so bad. And one of the reasons that it wasn't so bad is that he had told me something really important. As he was preparing me to start to fly, he had told me something really important. And that was, he said, Petra, you have to understand, this airplane, it is designed to fly. It's actually designed in such a way that all you have to do is give it power, and it will automatically lift off the ground. You have to steer it. Once you get up here, you have to steer it. But it is designed to stay in the air. Something really seriously, critically bad would have to happen for this plane to drop out of the sky. It is designed to fly. Now, that was an extraordinary concept to me. And he talked to me about the law of aerodynamics, and he talked to me about how that works and the way the law goes. The air goes over the the wing of the plane, and it actually creates a lift, and that was like mind-boggling in of itself. How does the air going across the top of the wing cause a lift? It's not from the bottom, it's from the top. I couldn't even bend my mind around that. But he kept telling me, but these are the laws. They're laws that are used to build the airplane, to understand how all of this works, and the plane is designed to fly. So are you. You are designed to fly. You are designed to thrive in your life. And that thriving is that soaring into more life, into a greater experience of life, to keep expanding our horizons and to keep soaring into that which is pulling us forward. And like I learned about that plane, we can learn that we are designed for this. The very laws of the universe are designed to support our growth and thriving. And we can learn the laws, just like the laws of aerodynamics, we can learn these laws and we can use them even if we don't completely understand how it works. We can use them in our own lives. We can learn how to fly because we are designed to do so. Now, just like in flight, we have the law of aerodynamics, which culminates in lots of different laws, the laws of gravity, and different laws that are utilized to come together. We have a fundamental principle that we understand is the universal principle that is underlying all the laws of our soaring and flying in our lives, and fundamentally it's the law of cause and effect. And normally, this is how the law of cause and effect is taught. You know, what goes around comes around, garbage in, garbage out. You better watch your attitude, watch your thinking, pay attention, because if you're not doing it right, boom, there you are. This law of cause and effect is the fundamental principle that is the operating system of the universe that is installed in everything. Everything moves and operates from the macrocosmic level to the microcosmic level based on this universal principle. And we can learn how to use it. Usually, this is the way we learn how to use it. You know, you reap what you sow. Consequences are inescapable and irrevocable, so you better pay attention. Watch what you think, watch what you say. You better watch what you believe. How did you create that? You know, consequences are inescapable and irrevocable. And the law of cause and effect can be used a little bit pejoratively, a little bit as a stick in our lives, right? But a law is a law. The law actually in and of itself is completely and utterly neutral and can be used for anything. Just like the law of electricity or the law of fire can be used to burn thousands of acres or can be used to heat our homes, right? So, if the consequences are irrevocable and inescapable, then sow today what you want to reap tomorrow. What if we understood this law and consciously utilized it in our lives and paid attention to it in this way? Let me sow today what I want to reap tomorrow. Let me pay attention to my thoughts and attitudes and my playing big today so that I reap more of that tomorrow. In abundance and prosperity, we talk about this as the law of giving and receiving. As you measure, so shall it be measured back to you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over, we're told. That the law of giving and receiving is the way the law of cause and effect operates in our abundance. The law of circulation is another way in which we kind of grab a hold of this idea of moving, the moving flow of life, and that we can, well, here's the deal. See, So often, this is presented to us as a moral and ethical thing. You should give because God will love you if you do. You should give because it makes you a nicer person. You should give. And this is true. And yet there's a deeper reality that says giving and receiving is fundamental to the nature of life itself. And it's not that you should give because God will love you. It's that we need to give to be in the cycle of life. Do you see? We weren't designed only to get. We also weren't designed only to give either. There's lots and lots and lots of studies that show that people who selflessly give over and over and over and over and over again in a martyred, giving themselves away sort of way end up terribly depressed and very unhappy. So this is not giving till it hurts. It's not a moralistic or ethical or see how spiritual I am. Look at how much I give, right? That's what the Pharisees were doing on the street corner. Remember those stories? But this is the utilization of the laws of the universe in a way that really allows abundance to flow. So how do we use these laws? How do we actually engage with these laws? Here at CSLDallas, we teach 5 spiritual practices, each one designed to help us experience the presence of that ultimate reality of life and love itself, and to use the laws for good. And so we teach 5 spiritual practices: spiritual mind treatment, which is a directive practice, meditation and visioning, which are both receptive practices that allow us to get into a right relationship with that life that is moving in and through us. And then we have relational practices, sacred giving and sacred service. These practices put us in relation to the manifest body of God and the infinite number of ways in which that universal reality is expressing itself. So when you say namaste, the God in me bows to the God in you, recognizes spirit, spirit is recognizing spirit. You see, these practices, sacred service and sacred giving, allow us to deeply engage with the universe as it shows up in life, in creation, in each other. So we teach these practices so that we can deliberately and consciously utilize the very nature of reality itself to bring about good in our own lives and good in the world. So sacred giving is the practice of being a part of this law of giving and receiving, of utilizing the law of circulation. And the first thing, as I said, is it's a relational practice. It reminds me that while God may be all that I am, I'm certainly not all of God. God is this infinite reality that is expressing as all of you, and all of you who are watching online, and all beings everywhere. And so sacred giving reminds me of this relationship. Sacred giving also is an opportunity, a deliberate opportunity to build faith. The faith that I live in an abundant universe, the faith that I have enough to share, and the faith that as I give, this universal law is actually operating. And finally, sacred giving is a deep practice that creates an abundance consciousness. Because sacred giving is given cheerfully, joyfully. We do not practice give till it hurts. We don't practice give because you should, right? How many of you don't need to raise your hand, tell me the truth about this. How many of you meditate because you should meditate? How many of you pray because you should pray? No, we do these practices because over time we begin to experience the result of the practice, don't we? And our meditations become deeper, and our experience of the divine begins to open up in all new ways. And then we're meditating because it's a joyous thing to do, not because somebody said we should be doing it. Well, we might have to tell ourselves we should be doing it to get started, right? Well, I should go to the gym too and not eat sugar, right? But if I will get started on it, and I do it because I know that there's value in this practice, something begins to happen. And so this practice of sacred giving develops an abundance consciousness, because if we are not giving out of obligation or duty or being should upon, but we're giving because we know we are utilizing a law and we are allowing life to flow through us, I guarantee you, the result is a growing experience of abundance. You cannot give with joy and not experience the presence of life itself. You see? You are designed to fly, to thrive. Sacred giving activates the law in service to that thriving. Science of Mind teaches you can have anything you want. You can experience the life of your dreams, and you can fly and thrive in whatever way you choose, except that it may harm no one. And even more strongly, Science of Mind teaches that a true abundance consciousness can only really grow when we want for others as much as we want for ourselves. So that harm no one turns into a deep expression of generosity. Truly, our abundance is mirrored when other people are abundant. And when our abundance overflows, do you see that generosity blesses others in exactly the same way that we are blessed with the abundance of life itself? And so our abundance consciousness grows and our generosity grows. And do you see what we have is the law of receiving and giving? Receiving and giving. Receiving and giving. Cause and effect. And we are engaged in this beautiful dance of life. Our spiritual practices are also designed to expand our consciousness, to expand us, right? When we sit in meditation, our consciousness expands and we begin to move into the infinite. When we sit in visioning, our consciousness expands and possibilities unfold that we never thought of before. When we do our spiritual mind treatment, consciousness expands and we begin to get and accept that this thing that we have declared in our prayer is actually done unto us because we have believed it. You see, everything is expanding. And so out of our acts of generosity, our whole being expands. We're actually acting out the expansive nature that we are seeking to grow within. Does it make sense? So it's a little bit of that whole fake it till you make it thing, right? We teach that. We don't feel so loving right now. Yeah, not so much, right? To whomever it is. But fake it till you make it. Not in a fakey, inauthentic way. Oh, I love you. No, but in a real, genuine, namaste. I may have trouble with what you're doing, but I'm really going to try to remember that that's a child of God. Right? That's the spiritual practice of it, not some Pollyannish wash over it, but a deep practice of being in that place and saying, I'm going to forgive because that's also what I want. I'm going to love Do you see? And so these things open us and expand us, and we do it, and then all of a sudden one day we realize, wow, being loving in this kind of a situation, gosh, it's a whole lot easier than it used to be. Do you see, right? Because we've practiced it, even if we didn't feel it. We practiced it. We practiced the behaviors of it. So we set the intention and we practice the behavior, and somewhere the magic happens. They meet in the middle. Do you see? And then all of a sudden we're congruent, and our practice becomes our reality, becomes our lived experience. So we teach the practice of sacred giving, and we talk about it this time of the year. We talk about it other times of the year as well, but we talk about it this time of the year because our prosperity can be jump-started, or it can be grown and heightened during this time of the year when we talk about our pledge program. And some of us, I don't need to, it might not be anybody in the room. I don't want to project anything on you. Some of us might have an unpleasant taste in our mouth from previous experiences of pledging, of tithing, of being told what one was supposed to give. Oh God, once again, the church is asking for money, don't they? That's all they ever do is ask for money. Right? We have all that running in the background. So we're going to tease that apart. Because if we don't talk about this, we can't teach ourselves how to engage in sacred giving. And we leave that practice off the table. And we're not going to do that. So we're going to talk briefly about the difference between a pledge and a tithe. We get a lot of questions. What is the difference between a pledge and a tithe? Well, first of all, let's look at a pledge. We have the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Founder's Pledge, we have a Mayor's Pledge. I have no idea what that is. We have the Goodness Pledge. We have the Pledge for Inclusion. Cece's Pizza even has a pledge. So, what in the world is a pledge? What does pledge mean? Okay, if you look up pledge in the dictionary, its etymology and what it means is a promise. A pledge is a promise. I promise. I promise to give this much money. I promise to do this thing. I promise to be this way, right? That's what a pledge is. And so when we talk about pledges here, when we are inviting each other and ourselves to make a pledge, it is a promise to a promise to ourselves. It's a promise to begin the disciplined practice of sacred giving. And it's a promise to CSLDallas that this is a place I care about, I support, I want to see grow and continue. I want to continue to see it going out online. I want to be able to watch it when I'm not able to be here. I want all of these things to grow, and so I'm going to contribute. So our pledge is an opportunity for regular and disciplined practice of sacred giving. It is both supportive of ourselves, and it is generous to others, right? And so can you see we're already engaging in this law of giving and receiving. It's supportive of our own spiritual practice of growing our abundance consciousness, and it's supportive and it's generous to others. So I think of pledging as the workout routine for sacred giving. Right? You go to the gym, you got to do 10 reps, and you got to do 15, and you have a regular disciplined practice of whatever it is that you do to keep yourself in shape. Or you say, okay, I'm going to have a meditation practice. I'm going to practice 2 minutes every time my alarm sounds on the hour. I'm going to do my prayer work. I'm going to have a prayer practice every morning. I'm going to sit and I'm going to do prayer. Right? Do you see these are the disciplines that we get into? I'm going to be in service. I'm going to find something to give myself to beyond just my own life, my own thing. We commit to volunteering somewhere. We're in sacred service. Do you see this is the way in which we build that muscle. And of course, why we call it a practice. Something we keep practicing. You don't go to the gym and then say, oh, I'm buff. I'm going to be buff now for the rest of my life. I never have to lift another weight. Silliness, right? It's silly. We know for a fact that if we stop doing it, something is going to change, and it's not going to change in the direction that we wanted. That's why we keep going, we keep going, we keep going, we keep going, right? It's a practice. It's not a completion. It's a practice. All right. So a tithe is essentially making this commitment in a really big way. That's basically what a tithe is. It's making a commitment to yourself that you absolutely are moving in the direction of this growing spiritual consciousness, and that you are utterly committed to the spiritual practice. In a tithe, there's no wiggle room. It's 10%, period. End of sentence. 10% of whatever you decide, net or gross. I don't get into any of those conversations because I always feel like we're nickel and diming ourselves to death. It's just 10% of whatever feels like is an outrageous commitment. That's what I think. So, 10%. We're told it comes from the Bible, from Malachi. The whole tithe is 10%. And quite frankly, I think it's 10% for two reasons. One, 10% is very easy to calculate. Right? It's very easy to calculate. I don't know how you calculate 1/7, right? I don't. The tithe is 5.7%. Like, oh gosh. 10%, super easy to calculate. Right? You got 10 sheep, you give one. It's really not rocket science, right? It's very, very easy. But I also think it's 10% because it feels like a lot, which is very interesting. I've noticed for myself that if I see something is on sale for 10%, I'm like, is it really worth going to the store? Really, it's 10%. Yeah, 10% of $5, 50 cents. Well, it's just about costing me 50 cents in gas and time. So, 20, 25%, now you're talking. Get it for 50% off. Man, I am there, right? So 10% doesn't feel like a lot when we're receiving it. But when we have to give it, oh man, that 10% just grew in our minds. Like, holy mackerel, that's a big number. 10% of $5 is still 50 cents, whether we're giving it or receiving it. Do you see that's the law part? Do you see that? That's the law part. Recognizing the difference between the way we feel about it, that's the growing our consciousness part. And so when we tithe 10%, that is an outrageous act of faith, of trust. It's an outrageous statement that we're making, that our paycheck isn't our source, our bank account isn't our source, how much money we have isn't our source, our investments aren't our source. There's only one source to be had, and that's the infinite abundance of the universe. That is the statement we're making. And we're so utterly committed to that reality that we're willing to bank our prosperity on it by giving this seemingly outrageous amount of money away. This builds a mental equivalent of abundance. I can remember as I grew into that. I mean, I was a tipper when I first started in church. The music was pretty good today. We'll throw in $5. Oh, the minister was pretty hot today. Oh, throw in $20. Well, actually, when I first started, we were still throwing in change. But we don't get change anymore, only dollars. Now you have to text because nobody carries dollars anymore. No, I don't know. I've never carried dollars anymore. And I remember looking at this and going, holy mackerel. For some people, 10% is a no-brainer. Just like sitting down for 30 minutes of meditation is a no-brainer. Or doing a spiritual mind treatment for ourselves and others is a no-brainer. But some of us, we have to work into it. And I can remember first making my pledge. I'm going to give this amount of money every month. Whether I'm in church or not, I'm going to give this amount of money. And then I started to grow that. And I remember the first time I wrote out a pledge card, 10%. I'm giving 10% of my income. I actually figured it out. I didn't write 10%. I actually wrote down the dollar amount. And do you know, when I wrote that dollar amount for the very first time, I felt more abundant than I had ever felt in my life before. Do you know why? Because up until that point, I believed only wealthy people gave money. Only wealthy people could afford to give money. But here I was, giving 10% of my income. That must mean I'm wealthy. Do you see? Right there, we've grown our abundance consciousness. Right in that moment. And the first time I wrote a tithe check that had a comma in it, oh man, I was rolling and rolling and rolling in my experience of prosperity. Do you see? We've had people share in here how they've started, and they've watched people give lots of money and have said, you know, I'm going to do that too. We have this idea to be a philanthropist. We have to be wealthy. We have to have oodles of money. No, we just have to have the commitment to recognize that when we practice sacred giving, we are turning our attention to our source, and we are utilizing this law of giving and receiving for good in our own lives and for good in the life of the community that we support. We also suggest that a tithe, because it is a spiritual practice of knowing where our source is, that a tithe goes to the source of your spiritual food. I always say something a little heretical about this time. CSLDallas does not require your tithe. It doesn't. We ask for your pledge. We want very much for you to feel as though this is your spiritual home. But if you are spiritually fed in other places, you are free to split your tithe up. It is, quite truthfully, our hope that you find your spiritual food here and that you will tithe here. But we ask for your pledge. And we want to teach you the spiritual practice of tithing. Now, the other thing that I think is, it's always fraught with this, all this old garbage that comes around with these words. I want to make it very, very, very clear. God does not need your money. You are not tithing so that God will be more abundant. Just like we don't meditate so God will be peaceful. Right? We don't do prayer so that God will be better. Our spiritual practices are not for the universal reality. The universal reality is already whole, perfect, and complete in every way, expressing itself in, through, and as creation in its entirety, delighting in itself in every way. It needs nothing from us other to express ourselves. That's the only thing it needs from us. We do these practices to align ourselves with these truths. Do you see? So I invite you to tithe, just like I invite you to meditate and do prayer work and do visioning and volunteer, be in sacred service. I hope that you do all of those things here. We ask for your pledge. While God may not need your money, CSLDallas does. That's just the reality of it. Let's just be clear. I mean, it is that simple. Those doors were open when we walked through, and they're open every day, and every time you watch it online, somebody's keeping these doors open so that you can watch it online and so that you can take advantage of all the programs. So CSLDallas does actually need your pledge, your commitment. God does not need your money. You need the spiritual practice of sacred giving. As much as we need the spiritual practice of meditation, or visioning, spiritual mind treatment, and service. So we're going to invite you into that practice through this month. We're really inviting, for those of you who have already participated in the practice, we know who you are, and we bless you and thank you. And so many of you have been in this practice with us for a long time, and God, can I just tell you how much that means to us? It's really, it's a wonderful thing to fly together, right? And to watch each other fly over the years as we've flown bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in our own lives. Holy mackerel. It's amazing. And so to remind ourselves that we are designed to fly and to design to thrive, we're going to close with a series of affirmations. This will be our closing treatment, these affirmations. So I'm going to invite you to repeat after me. I live in an abundant universe.
I live in an abundant universe.
To give this much, wow, how much I've received.
To give this much, wow, how much I've received.
Grateful I can give this much. That's how much I have to share.
Grateful I can give this much. That's how much I have to share.
I am always abundant and taken care of.
I am always abundant and taken care of.
It is my joy to share my abundance and do good in the world.
It is my joy to share my abundance and do good in the world.
So just remember, you are designed to fly. You are designed to thrive. The laws are available to you each and every day, and you are being taught how to use them. Go be prosperous. How do you do that? I live long and prosper.